Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Marcaccio, and I'm the Acting State Personnel Administrator, employed with Rhode Island Department of Administration. I am here today to conduct an unclassified public hearing on behalf of the Department of Administration. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to Chapter 36-4 of the Rhode Island General Laws, specifically Section 36-4-16-.4. For the record, today is Friday, July 24th, 2015, and it is 8:30 a.m. Notice of this public hearing was posted on Friday, July 17th, 2015, on each of the 5 floors within the Department of Administration, at the State House Library, and filed electronically with the Secretary of State. Also, on Friday, July 17th, 2015, the notice and agenda were electronically forwarded to labor union officials and state agency management personnel. The purpose of this hearing is to allow for public comment concerning one proposed amendment to the unclassified service classification and pay plan contained in Public Hearing Agenda 033. This proposal is specific to salary increases for 6 cabinet directors of state executive departments. In terms of process, it is important to note that all comments will be recorded, and this record shall be reviewed by the Governor of the State of Rhode Island, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The proposed increases will be referred to the General Assembly and will become effective 30 days after such referral, unless they are rejected by formal action of the House and Senate acting concurrently within such time period. If you wish to make a comment on the proposed amendments, I ask that you please speak loud enough in order to make certain that the reporter here in the front of the room can accurately record your comments. Also, please identify yourself for the record, and if you are representing an organization, please identify that organization. Finally, if you have any written comments, you are welcome to provide a copy. As I proceed, I will provide you with an opportunity to comment on a specific item, or if you wish, you may provide a more global comment on the entire agenda. Please turn to the agenda. Agenda item number 1 proposes general salary increases for 6 eligible unclassified service cabinet directors of state executive departments. I first would like to invite Mr. Jonathan Wormer, who is here today to provide public comment on behalf of the Department of Administration. Mr. Wormer.
Thank you, Melanie. For those of you that would like to follow along, there's a handout you can find at the beginning of the room. I'm going to walk through it. On page 2, where we sort of start the information, as Melanie said, there are 6 directors proposed for an increase: Department of Transportation, Department of Environmental Management, Behavioral Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Business Regulation, and Department of Labor and Training. They're all proposed at a flat rate of $135,000. This compares for those similar positions in Massachusetts and Connecticut. Connecticut's average for those are $156,000, $757,000, and Massachusetts $147,000 and $27,000. If you look at the first slide discussing a particular department, Department of Transportation here on slide 3, we have a lot of information on one slide, so let me orient you to these slides. So in the top right-hand corner, it's a discussion of the particular department. The bottom right-hand corner is how the Director of Transportation compares to Connecticut and Massachusetts compared to the Rhode Island proposal. To the left, what we have is a graph, and the graph shows the current salary for the director at $130, and it shows the last time there was an increase in 2007. And what it also shows is how the salary would have increased if the position had been eligible for cost of living adjustments like all other state employees. Currently, under the law, they are not eligible for cost of living adjustments. So factoring those cost of living adjustments in, the salary would have been $154,518 by now. The other interesting part of the graph is the little gray circle, 9. That's the number of employees that currently make more than the Director of Transportation in the department. Who are these kinds of employees? These are, division directors. These are often legal counsel. Transportation doesn't have any doctors, but often there are doctor positions in the department, those are them. It's somewhat difficult to compare government director salaries to those in the private sector. But this one in particular is an organization of over 750 employees, close to $500 million of operations. I think it'd be pretty difficult to find a private sector construction company with that sort of scope that has a director that makes less than $135,000. Moving to slide 4, we have a comparison for the Director of Environmental Management. 135 is below the Connecticut-Massachusetts region. There hasn't been a pay increase since 2002. 11 employees make more than the director currently, and 141 is the salary that would have existed if they had gotten the cost of living adjustments. close to 400 FTE and $100 million of operations. I think what else is really important here, and this is true for a couple of the other positions as well, is these in particular aren't just about how many dollars and cents it manages or how many personnel it manages. This particular department and a few of the others, they regulate a huge swath of our economy, affecting the way businesses operate, where they can be located, what decisions they're allowed to make, and that's critical for putting Rhode Island back to work. If you look at slide 5, the Director of Behavioral Health Care and Development of Disabilities in Hospitals. Over 1,400 employees, a budget of close to $400 million, below the region of Connecticut and Massachusetts in salary. 126,582 compared to 154, almost 155 that would have existed with the COLA increases. Hasn't had an increase in 10 years, and there are 3 employees making more than the director. We proceed to slide 6, Director of Human Services. We have almost 1,000 employees, a budget north of $600 million, a proposed salary below the region of Connecticut and Massachusetts, 10 employees that make more than the director. Their position hasn't had an increase since 2002, and if it had received the cost of living adjustments, it would be at $143,000, almost $144,000. Proceeding to the Director of Business Regulation, $135,000 being less than the regional average, Connecticut and Massachusetts. 100 employees, close to $15 million in budget. Last increase in 2002. The cost of living adjustments would have gotten to $132,000. 9 employees that make more than director. This one in particular I'd like to point out is dedicated to the regulation of businesses and licensure in the state, and we think it's very, very critical for the operation in getting Rhode Island back to work. And finally, Department of Labor and Training, $135,000, far below the regional average. 410 FTE, budget $440,000. $43 million. Last increase in 2002 with a projected 141.5 if the cost of living adjustments had been taken into account. And there's 6 employees making more than the director. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Wallner. Are there any other comments that individuals would like to make regarding this agenda? Yes, sir?
Yes, I would.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right,
Hold on
thank you
one
very much for your comments on a lucrative amount of increase. It's wonderful. However, do we have that kind of cash flow in the state of Rhode Island?
second. I'm sorry, could you just identify yourself for the record?
Veronica Basoyan.
Thank you.
I'm a resident of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I lived here all my life. I love Rhode Island, and I'm very emotional about where Rhode Island is going. I wanted to say good morning, Governor Ramondo. However, it's good morning, my fellow Rhode Islanders. My name is Veronica, and I'm not a friend of the governor's on Facebook. However, I know she likes to project herself as being a humble person and likes to believe she's humble like the Rhode Islanders. I respect her for that. I love the humor in the movie Robin Hood, when Errol Flynn plots to steal from the rich to give to the poor, because they are being taxed also, and they cannot pay. I ask you, is it a wise psychology to take from the poor and give to the rich? Rhode Island businesses are already hit hard with high rates on utilities. They're trying to survive, let alone they cannot have growth. Some have to leave the state, as some have higher taxes, will stunt their growth and will create more unemployment. The average person cannot and must not be punished with higher taxes. If anything, taxes should be lowered. State tax should be lowered. We have lower taxes in Connecticut and Massachusetts. Why not go to Massachusetts and buy large items when you can pay a percentage less? So we lose again there. Now, if Rhode Island does not have a vast cash flow, they should try to be frugal. We are the smallest state in the nation. We cannot afford to keep up with the cliche, keeping up with the Joneses. Our neighbors, Connecticut, have a lucrative revenue coming in every day from 2 casinos. I know, because I was there. Not only do they reap a percentage of revenue from the abundant amount of slot machines in these casinos, which are vastly more than what you see here in Rhode Island, they not only receive a revenue from that, but they receive from large jackpots, 500,000, 1 million, 3,000, 5,000. Tell me, do we have that in Rhode Island? No. So how can we compete or think that we should be like the casinos that are making the state of Connecticut wealthy? Our neighbors in Massachusetts are well endowed with large businesses, and they make us look like a drop in the bucket. They have a lower sales tax than we do. They are constantly attracting new businesses to venture into Massachusetts for future growth. Football, basketball, hockey, baseball, I love them all, and they are constant winners. I love Rhode Island, as I was born here and educated here, but I have never heard of 33% or more to be given to anyone that is a laborer. Entering into Rhode Island, there's the heartwarming sign that says, "Welcome to beautiful Rhode Island." Would it not be a wiser choice to employ the unemployed to clean our highways and byways of litter on the breakdown lanes that are dangerous for a driver? Not so beautiful sight to see? Does not look as though a street sweeper has been utilized. Potholes are everywhere. Some have been filled, some are still present. We need new streets. Rhode Island has a high rate of unemployment, but we do not need a high rate pay scale in a small state that has less tasks to perform than a larger state. It breaks my heart to see so many homeless people begging on every other corner for money to buy food. I am a woman, like the governor, and as you know, women are very emotional, and we're more emotional than the other species, which are men. And I am emotional about the future of Rhode Island. So I put before you the task, Governor, to execute what is good for Rhode Island, and not what is good for a few that want an increase in their salaries. I'm sure they can live on $135,000. I do it on less than that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any further comments on the agenda this time? Can you
Hi.
please identify
Sure.
yourself?
My name is Kevin Lungins. I'm a resident of Coventry, Rhode Island. I feel a little underprepared. 7 years ago. I just had a couple questions about how the methodology and how you came to this, and that's really where I'm coming from. Because I look at, you said a regional average or a regional look, and we look at Massachusetts and Connecticut. And to me, I don't think that's a really good comparator. I think Massachusetts and Connecticut, if we're comparing, chowder recipes or Red Sox fans, I mean, that's a pretty good comparator. But if we're looking at salaries, I mean, these are states with much bigger populations, and I think it was like 6.5 times Massachusetts is compared to Rhode Island, 3.5 with Connecticut. Economy-wise, I mean, I don't have those numbers, but I know they're much bigger. And to look at these salary increases to get in line or to get in, we're using Connecticut, Massachusetts. Yeah, it looks like we're vastly underpaid, but shouldn't we be using states that more accurately reflect our size of our economy, the size of our population? I just did a quick thing, so it's amazing what the internet can do. You can find so much information so quickly, but looking at New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Delaware, and those seem to be states that more accurately reflect our population size and more so within reason in terms of the size of our budgets. And so for me, I just can't, Massachusetts and Connecticut, it looks like we're using them because they're our neighbors, and that's really it. And I don't see how they're a really good comparator. And why aren't we using Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Delaware? I mean, those seem to be more accurate size and scope compared to Rhode Island. And also, when it comes to the budget, this is something that came up afterwards. I wrote down was we showed the numbers of the budget and the full-time employees for each of these positions, but why aren't we showing them for Connecticut and Massachusetts also? That seems to be, if you want to see what the size. I mean, they have. Getting through Connecticut, getting through Massachusetts is a little bit bigger than getting through Rhode Island. I mean, I know growing up in Narragansett, going north of the tower was a day trip, but it's sort of it just doesn't seem like an accurate reflection of those two. And it's not to undermine the hard work that I know these people do, and I know they're out there working hard. But this is Rhode Island, we have a budget, and going back to what he said about the business regulation. I mean, paying someone more for business regulation doesn't get rid of business regulation. What we really need to do is to have pay for performance, and have someone, if we're going to pay someone $135,000, show me some measurables, show me something you did that got rid of some business regulations, or you're able to cut your spending your department by 8% or something like that to justify that, not just saying, look at what Massachusetts and Connecticut makes. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments on the agenda today? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susie Marvin. You took a lot of my key points that I was going to mention, but there are a few other things that I thought were important to bring up. These people, again, they don't have a track record. They've only been on the job for a little over 6 months. I mean, nowhere do people usually get a promotion in 6 months, even in the States, you don't. But I guess that's not true when you're politically connected. So there's a reason why these people were hired. I'm not sure whether it's all qualifications or not. But I don't think it's fair to the people of Rhode Island who have to struggle for a job and who have to go out every day and think that they can get a job that's going to give them a 33% raise after 6 months. It's just not right. It's not even running a business. You would never go and do that without having a review and having to defend your case about why you should get a raise or not. So I don't think it's fair. The other things that I think are important that, these are all business things, but the things that Rhode Islanders are already giving up, and to ask them to give more up so these people can have a bigger raise, I think is outrageous. The cuts that we've done to Medicaid, the taxes increases that, supposedly that, we're not having to do, but they're giving tax breaks to business, so in reality, the individual has to pay the price for that because we only have one pie and the slice is getting smaller. The fact that they're looking at tolls to pay for roads and bridges. And that's fine if everyone pays for them. But again, it's always a political decision on that. I was in favor of doing the Secana Bridge. I have a transponder, and it was costing me money to go over it. But did I complain? No. But because I, in Providence, don't have the political pull that someone down in Secana has, they got the tolls off, right? And what are we doing now? We're going back to look to pay for more tolls to put up so that we can recover to pay for those bridges again. I mean, it seems a little bit ridiculous, doesn't it? The other thing is that, the other comment I was going to make is Mr. Warmer's comments. He kept using the fact that these people haven't had a cost of living increase and what it would be. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a retiree of the state, and I'm not getting a cost of living, and I'm not going to get one until the day I die. And that's because of Gina Ramondo and her plans. So therefore, I think that these people should not get a cost of living until I do. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further comments on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Todd Sandoll. I live in North Providence. I just have a few points that I jotted down that I'd like to make real quick. First, this salary proposal is ostensibly to attract the right talent to these positions, but these positions are already filled at the present rate. So I'm just not seeing where we need an increase to attract new talent unless are we trying to actually replace these new employees already? I haven't heard anything about that. Another really important point that hits home to me personally is when we're comparing salaries of public employees, let's compare them to what we pay our military. An officer at 05 with 15 years of service makes about $80,000 a year. In the Navy, that's a commander. In the other services, that's, I believe, a lieutenant colonel. I don't know, I'm more familiar with the Navy since that's where I served. Anyway, a commander in the Navy with 15 years of service is typically a commander of a medium-sized vessel, like a guided missile frigate was what I served on, and our skipper was a commander. The value of that vessel at the time was about $500 million, and this was mid-'80s money, so I don't know what it would be these days. So the commander was responsible for that much money, the lives of 200 servicemen, and we did get brought into situations where that was entirely put at risk. His very life as well as ours all rested on his shoulders, and literally it was lives at stake as opposed to these jobs which, I hate to be cynical, but in this case I will be, the biggest thing that these folks are risking is a paper cut and their reputations. The next point that I'd really like to stress is that with the General Assembly in recess and not scheduled to return to session within the next 30 days, putting a 30-day cap on this for the General Assembly to take action is really disingenuous and unfair to the taxpayers, since the General Assembly is our direct voice into how our government runs and spends money. And then the last point I'd like to make, and this is a tough one to make without being personally attacking, but let's talk about the bridge closure in Cranston, since that's really the first publicly visible action for the Director of Transportation to oversee. That bridge was closed under what appears to be some questionable circumstances. It was closed for a month. It cost several business owners a month's worth of business. And the bridge was upgraded to be a status of structurally deficient come the end of that. Really, with that being the first thing to look at for a performance metric, it really doesn't warrant a 33% salary increase. That's really all that I wanted to say, other than to echo other comments previously stated. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
Good morning. I'm John Duffy, president of Duffy and Shanley, marketing and communications firm based in Providence. I'm here today to speak in favor of the increase for cabinet director salaries. I had the pleasure to serve as co-chair of Governor Ramondo's transition team. In that role, one of my primary responsibilities was to identify and recruit potential candidates for cabinet director positions. I was shocked with how low and inconsistent the salaries were for these vital positions, particularly the director positions of DBR, DLT, and DOT. My frustration grew upon learning that none of these salaries had increased in 6 years, and the majority had not increased in 12 years. These salaries made the hiring process very challenging for these positions. There were great candidates that we couldn't move forward in the process just because the salary made it a non-starter. The jobs are too important for Rhode Island to not have a competitive salary. I'm not talking about being competitive with the private sector, but with the public sector in other states, particularly Massachusetts. We had the opportunity to take advantage of a change of administration in Massachusetts and had hoped we would be able to identify strong, experienced public sector candidates, but the salaries prevented this from happening. Rhode Island deserves the best possible talent to serve the taxpayers. We must make the cabinet director positions more financially attractive. We were fortunate to be able to recruit a great talented team for Governor Raimondo, despite the hurdle that the salaries presented. The next piece is to retain the great talent we have in place, so I strongly urge the approval of these increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments on the agenda today? I would like to note for the record that there were written comments submitted by Mr. Roland LaValle, which will be incorporated into the transcript. Any other comments tonight? Hearing none, the record will reflect there are no further public comments on the agenda. It is now 8:57 a.m. and this public hearing is adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance.